Saving feels virtuous. It feels like discipline. It feels like adulthood. But when Fed holds rates at 3.50% minus 3.75%, and the world goes higher for longer, that same virtue can turn into a trap. A trap that keeps you broke. Not because saving is bad, because most people save in the wrong order, with the wrong incentives, and with a lifestyle that collapses the moment money gets expensive. I'm going to say something that sounds harsh, and then I'm going to prove it with mechanism, not slogans. In a higher for longer world, the people who get richer aren't the ones who try harder. They're the ones who build a structure that can survive high rates without being forced to sell, forced to borrow, or forced to panic. And before the angry comments arrive, let me set the boundary. If you don't have an emergency buffer yet, this starts there. If you're carrying high-interest debt, hoarding cash isn't the fix. It's usually the symptom. And no, I'm not giving stock picks. I'm talking about an operating system. Now, what did the Fed actually do? The Federal Reserve decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5 to 3.75%. That's not gossip. That's their statement. And the key point is not that the rate is 3.50% minus 3.75%. The key point is the posture. We're fine staying here because inflation is still somewhat elevated and the economy is still described as solid. That is what people mean by higher for longer. Not a headline, but a regime. A regime is a set of rules, and the rules change behavior. So let's do this the way I've always done it, with mental models. Model 1, inversion. Don't ask how to get rich. Ask how people stay broke. If you want to understand keeping you broke, stop fantasizing about upside. Start eliminating the ways you die. In a higher for longer world, there are 3 very common death spirals. High interest debt compounding against you. Fixed costs too high, so you have no flexibility. Emotional activity disguised as productivity. Constant switching, constant trading, constant doing something. Most people lose because they can't stay in the game. They don't get wiped out by one big catastrophe. They get bled out by the monthly payments, the easy financing, the little leaks that turn into a big leak, and the panic decisions made under pressure. The funny part is, they call that pressure bad luck. It isn't, it's structure. What Fed holds rates changes in real life when the Fed holds rates in this range. 3 things matter to you more than any fancy macro chart. 1, the price of debt stays high. 2, the hurdle rate for investment stays high. 3, the penalty for weak cash flow becomes brutal. That's it. And here's why it hurts normal people more than rich people. Rich people already own assets. Normal people often own payments. A payment is not an asset. A payment is a chain. Model 2. Incentives. The world will try to sell you the wrong solution when money is expensive. Lenders don't stop lending. They get smarter about how they sell you the monthly payment. They sell you affordable. They sell you only $299 a month. They sell you points. They sell you buy now, pay later. And the higher rates go, the more valuable that business becomes, which means the incentive to push it becomes stronger. Look at consumer credit. Credit card interest rates can climb as high as 30%, and average rates have been around 20% in recent reporting. Now tell me, in what universe do you save your way out of a 20-30% compounding headwind? You don't. You restructure. You stop the bleeding first. That's why so many people feel like they're doing everything right. They're saving $200, $500, $1,000 a month, and still staying broke, because they're saving with one hand while paying compounding penalties with the other. That's not discipline. That's a treadmill. It looks like progress. It feels like progress. It's not. Model 3, opportunity cost. The most dangerous cost is the one you don't see. Now let's talk about the part people misunderstand, the part that gets people angry. When I say saving money can keep you broke, I am not insulting the person who is trying to survive. I'm insulting the behavior of parking money indefinitely because it feels safe. There are two kinds of cash: safety cash, hoarding cash. Safety cash is your seatbelt. It stops you from being forced to sell at the worst time. It stops you from taking a predatory loan. It stops you from turning a small setback into a permanent scar. Hoarding cash is when you keep building the pile because you're afraid to make decisions. And here's the irony. In a higher for longer world, hoarding is often a disguised form of fear, because the real upgrade is not a bigger pile of cash. The real upgrade is a structure that turns surplus into ownership. Ownership is the engine. Cash is the seatbelt. Most people worship the seatbelt and never build the engine, so they stay broke safely. A quick reality check. Why higher for longer punishes weak structure? Higher for longer changes what I would call your error tolerance. When rates are low, you can make dumb mistakes and survive. When rates stay high, dumb mistakes compound. Let me give you 3 examples that don't require a finance degree. Example A, the family that did everything right and still can't breathe Jordan and Maya. Not real names, but very real pattern. 2 incomes. They save $600 a month. They're proud of it, but they also carry credit card balances because their fixed costs are too high. Rent, car payments, subscriptions, childcare, insurance. The little leaks, nobody audits. Their card APR is around the market average. Call it about 20%. So every time an unexpected expense hits, car repair, medical bill, school fees, they bridges it on the card, then they catch up. Except they never catch up, because 20% is not a bridge, it's a tax. So they develop a psychology. They say, we need to save more. They need to restructure fixed costs and kill high interest debt. Saving more without changing structure is just higher effort on the same treadmill. Example B, the small business owner who confuses revenue with resilience. A small business runs on cash flow, not hope. Higher for longer means lines of credit stay expensive and banks stay picky. So the business that was fine at low rates becomes fragile. The owner starts delaying maintenance, delaying hiring, delaying marketing. And now the business loses momentum. People say, high rates killed my business. Sometimes, but the deeper truth is, the business had no margin of safety. And when the regime changed, the lack of margin got exposed. Example C, the investor who becomes a forced seller. This is the quiet killer, not, I sold because I wanted to. I sold because I had to. Higher for longer increases the odds that you get forced into selling, because your life costs more, your debt costs more, and your mistakes cost more. That's why I keep repeating the same boring phrase. Faithy first job of money is to keep you in the game. Model 4, Lollapalooza. Multiple small forces combine into one big trap. People love single cause explanations. They say, inflation did it, or the Fed did it, or my boss did it, or the system is rigged. Sometimes the system is unfair. Fine. But the reason people stay broke is usually a Lollapalooza, a pile of interacting forces. Face lightly rising fixed costs, face lightly higher interest rates, face lightly unstable income, face lightly more consumption, face lightly less planning, face lightly more decision fatigue. No single item kills you, the combination kills you. And that's why saving alone doesn't save you, because you're fighting a system with a single tool. So what changes when the Fed holds rates at 3.50%? minus 3.75%. It changes what works. In a low-rate world, you could survive with sloppy behavior. In a higher for longer world, you need a sequence, not motivation, not inspiration, sequence. And I'm going to give it to you like I give it to my own family. Simple, mechanical, unromantic. The sequence model, seatbelt first. Then engine rule 1, seatbelt first. Build the safety bucket, you need an emergency buffer. Not because you're weak, but because life is volatile. Without a buffer, you become a forced borrower. Without a buffer, you become a forced seller. Without a buffer, you don't have patience. You have fantasy. So define the number. Not, I should save more. A number. If you want a starting heuristic, think in months of essential expenses, not lifestyle expenses. Rule 2. Kill the dragons. Attack high-interest debt by rate. I don't care about your feelings. I care about math. If you have debt compounding at 20% and you're saving at a tiny yield, you are pretending. Credit card rates can run extremely high, even up to 30% in reporting, which tells you what you're really up against. So you rank your debts by interest rate and you attack the worst one first. You don't negotiate with it. Rule 3, control fixed costs. Make your life cheaper than your ego. This is the part nobody wants to hear. Most people don't have an investing problem. They have a fixed cost problem. They lock themselves into payments. Payments turn normal life volatility into crisis, in higher for longer. The penalty for high fixed costs is ruthless. So you audit, you ask, which costs are fixed, which are optional, which are ego, and you reduce the ones that buy you nothing except a temporary identity. Rule 4, build the engine. Convert surplus into ownership only after the seatbelt. And dragons, do you build the engine? Because if you fund growth with survival money, you'll quit at the first bump. Ownership can be many things: a business, productive skills, diversified long-term investing, a side income stream that can scale. The point is not the instrument. The point is the direction from spending to saving to owning. Rule 5. Waiting is not doing nothing. Here is the mistake people make with my so-called patience philosophy. They think waiting means inactivity. It doesn't. Waiting means you don't force bad bets. You don't chase what you don't understand. You don't break your system for entertainment. It also means you build the conditions to wait. A safety bucket so you aren't forced. Controlled fixed costs so your life doesn't demand panic. A growth engine so you're actually compounding. Without those, waiting is just procrastination with a nice name. But I'm not rich. I can't do what rich people do. Good. Then don't. That's the wrong lesson anyway. Rich people can survive being wrong longer. You can't. So your first job is to not die. Then most people skip the survival step and wonder why they keep restarting. What this means for your behavior, right now, if you take one thing from this, take this. When Fed holds rates at 3.50%, minus 3.75%, and the regime is higher for longer, you don't win by working harder. You win by removing the compounding penalties, and you remove compounding penalties with structure, not vibes. So here are your minimum executable actions, the ones that separate talkers from builders. The 10-second action: write down your safety number. WON number, not a wish, not a feeling. A number. The 30-second action: set up automation. Even if it's small, if it requires willpower, it will eventually fail. Automation turns good intentions into a machine. The 2-minute action: do a fixed cost audit and a debt rate ranking. List your fixed costs. List your debts with interest rates. Circle the worst compounding enemy. Then start, not tomorrow. Not after you feel ready. Now, final warning. Why the higher for longer trap keeps you broke. The trap is not high rates. The trap is how people respond to high rates. They hoard cash beyond what they need for safety. They keep high interest debt because they're ashamed or overwhelmed. They maintain a high fixed cost identity and call it normal life. They chase returns while ignoring the compounding penalties in their own budget. They do activity instead of building a sequence. That's the trap. And it keeps you broke because it prevents ownership, patience, and compounding. High rates expose weak structure. They don't create it. So don't hate the regime. Use it. Higher for longer is a filter. It punishes the sloppy. It rewards the disciplined. It rewards the patient, the real kind of patient, the kind built on safety and structure. If you want to be in the small group that gets stronger in this environment, comment with 2 things. Your safety bucket target number, the one fixed cost you're cutting or renegotiating this month. Because in a higher for longer world, the people who win are the ones who stop pretending. They don't just save, they build a system that compounds, and that's how you stop saving from keeping you broke.